So here I am in a previous version of Boxcutter, and we are under cut utilizing box. So if we click and drag, we are able to draw our box, and we see that we're able to freely draw this box. So we can cut wherever we want on this cube. If we want to bring it to the other side and begin cutting just this corner area, we can, and we have absolute flexibility with it. And if we press D and we jump over to Custom Cutter, we see that Custom Cutter also has these same rules, which I refer to as box rules. The ability for Custom Cutter to just be able to be freely drawn out and transformed allows for some really weird and unusual combinations. However, sometimes you want something a little bit more constrained, and for that reason we have the ability for users to hold shift in order to scale the cutter to 1:1, and then if you want to have custom depth, you can also hold control during the extrusion process and it will automatically grab the 1:1 depth. However, we're in a version so old that it doesn't actually have that capability yet. But this is Custom Cutter as you've known and loved it, and really I feel that it's always played by box rules. So if we bring up the newer version of Boxcutter 718.11, we could press D, and if we jump to Custom Cutter, there's an option now called Auto Proportions, which I feel is the true form of custom cutters, and we'll be expanding on it from here forward. So there's also an option under Behaviors, where if we collapse behavior and expand shape, we see that there's an option for auto proportions, which basically means whenever you draw a custom cutter, you no longer have to hold down shift or control in order to get 1:1. So you can just draw a shape, perfectly extrude it to the 1:1 proportions of the shape. So I said in the previous video that we were making that change with shift and control, that a better system was going to be coming, and first we attempted it with our work with auto depth, but with auto depth we need something that's able to permanently be enabled for Custom Cutter to permanently modify its behavior. So therefore auto proportions was born. And whenever I'm talking about auto depth, I'm talking about basically under laser cut we can toggle auto depth, which has an option for custom proportions. So whenever this is enabled, we're able to just draw a shape and it automatically has proportions for both the X and the Y and the Z based on the scale of a single axis that we're drawing on. So this just makes life a lot easier. However, if we switch over to box, this behavior persists where we're now drawing boxes that have automatically calculated depth, which isn't really the best for your general experience. So now you can actually have auto depth just be off, because really you don't want to be modifying all of your cut behaviors. And then under custom, just have auto proportions on, and then whenever you draw a shape, you will just automatically be able to draw in this auto proportion mode. So another thing about it is you see me clicking and dragging and then extruding, and it locks thanks to AccuCut also being affected to take this change in mind. If we click and apply, it's able to complete. However, we don't even have to jump to the laser cut process. We can keep the shape 2D, click, and it will just jump to the 1:1 mode. And so right now I'm just showing it with the simple Boxcutter logo, but even with complex shapes, you can now draw them in very easily and just quickly tab them, press Ctrl R in order to rotate it, press spacebar to apply, and just get that correct depth every time without even having to worry about holding down any additional hotkeys. So this is a pretty major update whenever it comes to Boxcutter. We were going to originally save this for 719, but because of the extension of this event, it's easier to just get users acquainted with this early before we begin progressing. So shape auto proportion, which we were talking about as a thing for custom, would also affect your ability to use the draw dot whenever it comes to Ngon, therefore reducing the amount of keystroke presses in order to get your shape under control. So here we'll just draw my favorite Ngon shape. Once again, we'll press backspace a couple of times to go back a point, double click to bring this shape out, and we see that the notification jumped to box, which means that whenever the shape is paused, it's under box rules. And we see that whenever we grab the draw dot, we're still able to freely transform the shape, and that's because we're under box rules. So custom rules do not yet apply whenever it comes to Ngon, but if we hold shift, we can still get that 1:1 result and scale it proportionally to whatever we need it to be, and then just click and it will just perform its laser cut. But whenever it comes to custom, as long as this behavior is on, it will require that you turn it off in order to get that full power of laser cut. So the goal is to get 1:1, so it's absolutely proportional on every single axis, because more often than not, you may not actually want your depth to be just messed up at the very last minute. So deep philosophical questions were asked about whether or not you want to get your cutter just right on the X and Y and then just get all crazy on the Z, which even in this mode, we could always press Alt, which will unlock it and allow us to continue on with the extrude if we want to break the bounds that's locked in by auto proportion. So to demonstrate that again, I'm just drawing the shape, and let's actually make sure auto proportions is enabled. So we draw our shape, we perform our extrusion, it locks us in. We could just tap Alt and it disables it for us to be able to break the conditioning for the Z and get all the way through the shape if needed. And then we see that auto proportion is still enabled.